Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. On Puerto Rico, almost all of the island remains without access to power, clean water, food, and fuel a week after Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico. Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens. Many residents are criticizing the U.S. government, say aid has not been arriving fast enough. This is San Juan resident Jocelyn Velasquez.
The aid is too slow. They say it is coming from the United States, but who are they giving it to? Because I haven't received any at my house. No one has knocked at my door and said, here's some rice.
Under withering criticism, President Trump held a news conference Tuesday in which he congratulated himself on his response to Puerto Rico's disaster, repeating nearly a dozen times he was doing a great, amazing, tremendous, and incredible job. Trump also says he'll visit Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands next Tuesday. The Trump administration's also denied a request from several members of Congress to waive shipping restrictions to help get gasoline and other supplies to Puerto Rico faster and cheaper. The decision came even though the Department of Homeland Security waived what is called the Jones Act twice in the last month following Hurricanes Harvey and Irma, which hit the mainland United States. Maria was the most powerful hurricane to strike Puerto Rico in nearly a century. It destroyed the island's entire electrical grid, caused severe flooding, widespread damage to homes and infrastructure. Flights in and out of Puerto Rico are still severely restricted. Hospitals struggling to provide care with limited access to electricity from generators and dwindling supplies. We'll have more on the humanitarian crisis in Puerto Rico after headlines. Senate Republicans have officially abandoned their latest effort to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act after again failing to muster enough votes to pass the legislation. The Congressional Budget Office says the Graham-Cassidy bill would have caused millions to lose their insurance. This is the latest in a series of failed Republican efforts to repeal Obamacare and replace it with plans that would slash funding for Medicaid and give the rich lavish tax cuts. In Alabama, former state Supreme Court Justice Roy Moore won Tuesday's Senate runoff race to fill Attorney General Jeff Sessions' seat. The race divided the Republican Party and the White House, with former White House senior advisor Steve Bannon backing Moore and President Trump going to Alabama to hold a rally for his opponent, Senator Luther Strange. On Tuesday, Trump deleted his earlier tweets supporting Strange. Judge Moore was twice ousted as Alabama's Chief Justice. First, in 2003, for refusing to remove a monument of the Ten Commandments in the rotunda of the Alabama Judicial Building. After being re-elected, he was again ousted in 2016 for ordering his judges to defy the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling legalizing marriage equality. Moore is also well known for his racist and Islamophobic positions. He was a proponent of Trump's racist and discredited birther theory about President Obama. He also opposed Minnesota Congressman Keith Ellison's election to Congress because Ellison is Muslim. Just last week, Moore used racist language to describe polarization in the U.S., saying, quote, "Now we have blacks and whites fighting, reds and yellows fighting." Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, Foreign Relations Committee Chair Republican Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee has announced he will not run for re-election in 2018. The Washington Post reports the acting head of the Drug Enforcement Agency is planning to resign in less than a week over President Trump and concerns about what he calls Trump's lack of respect for the law. Last month, Chuck Rosenberg criticized Trump for condoning police brutality during his speech to police officers in Brentwood, Long Island, New York. In response, Rosenberg sent an agency-wide memo reading, quote, "We have an obligation to speak out when something is wrong." The Department of Homeland Security is planning to collect social media information about all immigrants living in the United States. The collected information would include people's social media handles, information they share on social media, and their online search results. The Electronic Frontier Foundation said, quote, "We see this as part of a larger process of high-tech surveillance of immigrants," unquote. The rule is currently undergoing a public comment period and is slated to take effect October 18th. Meanwhile, in San Diego, California, construction's begun on Trump's proposed border wall. Contractors working for the Customs and Border Protection Agency are building 8 different prototypes of the wall. The prototypes are between 18 and 30 feet high, and each costs $500,000 of taxpayer money to build. The entire wall's cost would be an estimated $38 billion. Officials say the Trump administration is planning to cap the number of refugees resettled in the United States over the next year at 45,000, the lowest level since 1980. Last year, under President Obama, the cap was 110,000 refugees. This comes amidst the world's worst refugee crisis since World War II. President Trump's doubled down on his attacks on NFL players protesting against racism and police brutality. Trump also tweeted Tuesday, quote, "The NFL has all sorts of rules and regulations." This is what Trump said at his news conference.
Well, I wasn't preoccupied with the NFL. I was ashamed of what was taking place because, to me, that was a very important moment. I don't think you can disrespect our country, our flag, our national anthem.
Also tweeted Tuesday, the NFL has all sorts of rules and regulations. The only way out for them is to set a rule that you can't kneel during our national anthem, unquote. Tuesday was the 5th straight day Trump has attacked the racial justice protests led by African-American athletes. On Monday, Trump appeared to celebrate his attacks against the players, telling conservative leaders at a White House dinner, quote, "It's really caught on. It's really caught on." Meanwhile, right-wing pastor Robert Jeffress, who sits on Trump's Evangelical Advisory Council, said the NFL players should be grateful they aren't shot in the head for protesting.
These players ought to be thanking God that they live in a country where they're not only free to earn millions of dollars every year, but they're also free from the worry of being shot in the head for taking a knee like they would be if they were in North Korea.
Tensions are rising between Iraq's central government and the Kurdistan regional government in northern Iraq over Monday's Kurdish independence referendum. On Tuesday, the Kurdish government said an overwhelming majority of people had voted for independence, although the full results have not yet been released. In retaliation, Iraq's prime minister has threatened to impose an air embargo on international flights unless the oil-rich Kurdish region surrenders control of its 2 international airports by Friday. In Mexico, anger is growing over the government's handling of the massive magnitude 7.1 earthquake last week, which killed at least 333 people. Residents say government aid is concentrated in wealthier neighborhoods of the capital, leaving poor districts and surrounding areas without help. Residents also say government rescue operations were called off too soon, leaving both bodies and possible survivors buried under the rubble. Meanwhile, crowds gathered across Mexico Tuesday to mark the 3rd anniversary of the disappearance of the 43 students from the Ayotzinapa Teachers College in the southern state of Guerrero. The students went missing September 26, 2014, after being attacked by local police. International experts say the Mexican military and federal police also played a role in the students' disappearance. The parents of the missing students arrived in Mexico City for the march in buses filled with supplies for victims of the earthquake. And in Saudi Arabia, women have won a major victory, the right to drive. Saudi women have been organizing against the ban on women driving for nearly 30 years, often taking their protests to the streets behind the wheel. This is one Saudi driver defying the ban.
We are in El Najah Street. I am going to take my sisters to do some of their work instead of waiting for the driver or someone to take them. They will be delayed, so we decided to do our work by ourselves. We are going to the salon now. I drive carefully and can drive very well. There is no danger to us, God willing.
Women in Saudi Arabia will now be able to obtain driver's licenses and drive legally by June 2018. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.